A disturbing Valley police call, all caught on body camera. And right now, a federal judge is deciding how much of a lawsuit should move forward.
It's a case ABC 15 investigator Dave Biskobing found that raises serious questions about the way Chandler police polices itself.
This is Luke Hine now, sitting for an interview. But this was Luke in May 2014, pinned on a car by a Chandler police officer. How did he get here? Well, let's take it back. Just 30 seconds.
Can I help you?
Luke approaches after his ex-girlfriend ran his car into a tree. The two officers can't get her out of the car and ask Luke for help.
Please talk some sense into her.
And when she does, things turn quickly.
Please don't. Hey! Don't! Drive you! You went after my officer. No, I did not. You did. Get off. Get off. Get off. What the Get off. I didn't do it. I'm just holding her. No! This is not fair. You want to get up? Dude! Please! I'm not doing anything. Please! I'm done, dude! I'm done! Get on the ground! I didn't do anything! Get on the ground! I'm not doing anything!
In official reports, this officer claims once he shut the door, the woman yelled, "Get out of my car," and charged him. But the video shows it differently. Now it all happens fast, so here's the beginning again, slowed down. As she exits, she lifts her hands into her hair, but this officer reacts, pushes her, and that causes Luke to react as well. Once it's over, the officer wearing the camera tells Luke repeatedly he won't be arrested.
I apologize, things with the way they did. Listen, like I said, I'm not going to charge you with any crime because I completely understand.
Backup officers arrive, including their supervisor, Sergeant William Nocella. But Sergeant Nocella doesn't know a body camera is still rolling.
So he can go ahead and head to jail, right?
I personally don't have a problem with, I understand his predicament.
Once the handcuffs go on, he goes to jail.
Okay.
So I'll ask it again. Do you want to unhandcuff him and get sued again, or do you want to put him in jail?
I'll put him
for
in
what
jail
he
then.
shouldn't have done. If you date an animal, this kind of shit happens, yes?
Okay.
So he decides to help an animal and not act like a law-abiding citizen. His sorry goes to jail.
For hindering?
Hindering, not following, whatever. You were here.
Okay.
If you can make the stretch, if he raised his voice above what mine is now, he goes for discount. But he's in a patrol car going to jail in the next 5.
Got it.
Luke was arrested, booked, and charged with interfering with duties of a public official. At the time, Luke had no idea what was said or done behind the scenes.
I feel like he should lose his job.
After an internal investigation, Chandler police suspended Sergeant Nocella for a single day. And then, after the lawsuit was filed, records show Nocella tried pressuring the officer with the camera to stop wearing it, saying, "The cameras will never help us, they will only hurt us."
I think every officer should be required to wear them, and they shouldn't be allowed to turn them off when they want to.
I'm investigator Dave Biskobing, ABC 15 News.
The charges against Luke were dropped once police were forced to turn over the video. As for his lawsuit, a decision about how much of the case will go forward is due any day now.
I think people think it's not going to affect them because they're not criminals, but I wasn't a criminal.
In the wrong place at the wrong time, a local man is left bruised and bleeding after he was jumped, tased, and beaten by police. Now the city is paying up for this attack in this case of mistaken identity.
Battered, bruised, and bleeding. This is the mugshot of an innocent man who says he was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time.
And then I just lived a few blocks away.
Dan Halstead was walking home from a local pub when he rounded this corner and his night took a terrible turn.
And then right around, I'm not sure exactly, but around here, a flashlight came on, and then I just heard a voice say, "Get up." And I heard footsteps coming at me.
Tased not once, but 5 times.
It felt like I was being set on fire. Hurt really bad. And they were grinding my face into the pavement for a long time, and I was screaming for the police.
It took several minutes for him to realize it was the police who had taken him down. According to a Portland police spokesman, officers were in the area trying to track down suspects in a graffiti case. They believed Halstead was one of those suspects. Police say he ran from officers and fought violently.
The police report was a total lie. You know, the officer lied through the entire trial.
The case went to a federal jury, which found Portland police officer Benjamin Davidson guilty of excessive force earlier this month.
Two Davenport police officers walk in. Riddell calls her boyfriend, telling him to pick up their daughter. When one of the officers hears Riddell's boyfriend's name, he tells Riddell,
"This is going to get ugly real quick."
"You're known as a community activist in the area, and you had done sensitivity training with the department when it came to race and officers dealing with the public."
That's right.
Watch as Riddell recoils in fear as one of the officers starts beating her. A store worker leaves the room quickly, carrying Riddell's 1-year-old daughter. The beating lasts for 1 minute and 5 seconds. Minutes later, an officer puts ice on her face. Riddell's right eye is so severely swollen, it's closed shut.
You say 70% of your vision is now lost in your right eye?
Yes, ma'am.
Following an internal affairs investigation, both officers were disciplined and both are still employed and back on the street as Davenport, Iowa police officers. Meantime, the internal affairs investigation also found no racial bias.
The alarm rang in at 5 a.m. on a cold winter morning. A 68-year-old Vietnam vet with a severe heart condition had set off his medical alert device. But instead of an ambulance, police arrived at Kenneth Chamberlain's apartment. Neighbors saw guns drawn, a riot shield.
They stated that if he didn't come open the door, they was going to knock it down.
Hearing my uncle, respond, "Please leave me alone, go away, I didn't call you, I don't need your help."
You hear one of the officers then use an expletive, and that's when he said he didn't give an F, used the N-word.
The N-word?
Yes.
Law enforcement sources confirm that's on the tape. But there's more. Later, the district attorney showed the family 2 videos in their custody, one from a hallway security camera, another recorded by a camera on a taser gun.
Then you hear the officer say, "Shut it off."
The taser video suddenly cuts off. Then they fired 2 real bullets. An autopsy report obtained by CNN shows them entering the side of his arm, indicating that Chamberlain was not facing the officers or had turned away.
So the story that the police put out is what it is, a flat-out lie.
What you see in the medical reports is a person who has, serious heart and sort of breathing problems. So he's described as someone who couldn't really walk up a flight of stairs, could get halfway before he'd have to stop. The shooter, police officer Anthony Corelli, is a decorated officer. His lawyer said, "We trust that the grand jury will rightfully determine that Officer Corelli's actions, while perhaps not understandable or acceptable to family members, attorneys, and other emissaries of the Chamberlain family, were justified under our laws."
Just to hear him constantly say over and over again, "Please leave me alone, I'm okay," and the way they mocked him is very hurtful.
2 LAPD officers under investigation stemming from a use of force incident that was caught on tape. A woman was seen being slammed to the ground twice, once while in handcuffs. Eyewitness News reporter Leslie Miller talked to the woman's lawyers, and she has the LAPD's response. She's live downtown. Leslie?
Michelle, it happened in broad daylight. In fact, there were witnesses who saw a woman being forcefully taken into custody by police for allegedly using her cell phone while driving. The pictures are graphic and disturbing. 34-year-old Michelle Jordan of Sunland, battered and bruised allegedly at the hands of 2 LAPD officers. The married mother of one who works as a registered nurse was pulled over last Tuesday on Foothill Boulevard and Saluda Street for a cell phone violation. She drove into this Del Taco parking lot, and what happened next was captured on the restaurant's surveillance camera. Watch as Jordan gets out of her vehicle. Moments later, she is slammed to the pavement and handcuffed. The officers pick her up, put her against the patrol car. About a minute and 40 seconds later, the 2 officers push her down to the ground a second time.
We have a defenseless woman in a sundress, 2 fully armed police officers.
The most egregious, the celebratory gesture of a fist bump afterwards.
The simple word is outrage. If any one of us, if any person on the street behaved that way, attacked an innocent woman, they would be in jail. They would go to prison. They would be facing charges.
The words on the side of their car is to protect and serve. It's not to intimidate and harass, and that's exactly what they're doing.
Dash cam video captured a Dallas man being beaten and wrestled to the ground by a police officer. Ronald Jones then spent the next 15 months in jail.
You are looking at dash camera video from inside a Dallas police car. Police are looking for 2 white men fighting in downtown Dallas, when then Dallas police officer Matthew Antkowiak sees Ronald Jones, who is African American, crossing Reunion Boulevard.
Mr. Jones is just walking down the street. Doesn't fit the description at all.
In his police report, Antkowiak claims Jones took his right hand and grabbed the officer by his throat, choking him and lifting him off the ground. But take a look at the dash camera. You see it's Antkowiak who is on top of Jones, choking him. The officer then claims Jones kicked him in the testicles and groin area while still choking him. But that never happens on video. On the second dash camera video, the officer is asked to turn off the camera. Then the officers say they found a crack pipe and claimed Jones was intoxicated. Jones was arrested for aggravated assault of a police officer and spent 15 months in jail until his attorney started requesting these videos.
Had the videos not surfaced, it's likely that Mr. Jones would have been convicted of this and served a long prison sentence.
Chief David Brown told News 8 they could find no evidence of excessive force. Still faced with the facts in the case, the city gave Jones more than $1 million in his lawsuit against the officers.
The 9-minute body cam footage is hard to watch. Shortly after the camera starts rolling, you can see former officer Mike Magnus slam the suspect into this refrigerator. Bleeding from the nose, they take him inside, and that's when Officer Magnus goes off. In the video, you can see one of the other officers try to calm Magnus down.
We're going to need medical. He's got a good...
I don't care. Strap him in the chair.
Okay. I am.
And this isn't the first time Magnus has been charged with excessive force. In 2009, he pled guilty after this man said Magnus threw him to the ground, breaking his arm.
When I saw that, I remember when he just grabbed me, and I didn't resist nothing, and just he pushed me and threw me all the way down.
Magnus was allowed to stay on the job.
Fox said why, that he wasn't harming anybody. Turner said, say something else and you'll be locked up. Fox said, quote, something else. Turner grabbed the clerk and started beating him. Court records say he pulled out clumps of Fox's hair and put him in a chokehold and arrested him for assault.
A New York State Supreme Court judge who says he was slugged by a cop. It happened as police were trying to keep a suspect on the ground. The judge was in the crowd watching and says the officer out of the blue hit him. Eyewitness News reporter Stacey Sager has more live tonight from Jackson Heights, Queens. Stacey?
Well, Diana, this came out of nowhere, according to this judge. He says he was just standing here in a crowd that, in fact, he called 911 because he thought these cops needed help. Well, pretty soon the judge says he was the one who needed to go to the hospital.
I was in great pain, and I was bent over holding my neck.
In fact, Judge Thomas Raphael here in Queens telling us he could have been killed here on 74th Street in Jackson Heights last Thursday night. Just after midnight, the judge in the white shirt here at this crime scene, where he says cops from the 115th precinct were apprehending a man on the ground. And from this hazy picture, you can see two cops trying to apprehend him. Judge Raphael saying he was worried about the cops and called 911.
I felt that if we could get more officers, it would calm everybody down and it would be less dangerous.
But pretty soon, he says, the crowd felt that one of the cops was using excessive force.
There was a woman on my left who said, I'm a nurse, you're injuring him, stop it. Other people were also yelling.
And he says he was just one of many standing in a crowd, and that's when it happened, that the cop attacked him.
He was running and he went
right into your throat?
Right here into my throat.
But that's not all. Judge Raphael says a sergeant here at the 115th did nothing when he initially complained about the cop.
And the sergeant came back to me and said, oh, I don't even know who you're talking about.
So he was, in your mind, he was trying to dismiss you?
Yes.
Late today, the judge's friend from this neighborhood corroborating the whole thing, adding that the cop even appeared pleased after he did it.
He was very happy, it seems.
He was smiling?
Oh, yeah, very smiling.
After he hit the judge?
Yes, of course.
Now, Judge Raphael is 69 years old. He's been on the bench for at least 7 years.
Well, Dave, it's not just one single case. There's multiple marshals involved and allegations ranging from sexual assaults to choking a citizen in court. This investigation begins with a 2011 video we've uncovered showing family court marshals arresting a woman because she claimed one of them sexually assaulted her. A warning, Some of the details of the story may be disturbing to some.
So I'm just going to close the case out and dissolve the order.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Monica Contreras came to family court with her 2-year-old daughter. She was in court for only a few minutes on a routine divorce case. According to internal court documents reviewed by the I-Team, Family Court Marshal Ron Fox ordered Contreras into a waiting room by herself for an unexplainable drug search. Contreras says Marshal Fox touched her buttocks, breast, and ordered her to lift up her shirt. A later internal investigation validated her claims. Contreras went right back into the same courtroom to tell hearing master Patricia Donninger her requests to have a female marshal search her were ignored.
I think I'd rather have a female in here. And he went in here and
This was going to take her home.
I was just offended by this.
Mama go to
I'm just offended that he asked me to do that.
Okay, so store stance, handcuff her.
Contreras pleads as Marshal James Kenyon begins to arrest her.
Or what, sir?
Hold on.
Okay, why would I be arrested? Can you please tell me?
Turn around, put your hands behind your back.
Can you please tell me?
Turn around, put your hands behind your back. Because of false allegations made against a police officer, so.
What?
We looked and could find no law supporting that arrest, let alone any law allowing an alleged sexual assault victim to be arrested by the alleged assaulter.
Jimmy, I got court. I still have to do this, so arrest her. I take the kid. We're done.
Why would you do that to me, sir?
Because you're making false allegations.
After repeated attempts by marshals to get Contreras to recant her story, she breaks down.
Let me go home, please. Let me go. It was all lies. I don't want to tell anything. It was all lies. All lies. All lies. All lies. Please stop.
We can do this the easy way. We can do this to her.
Marshal Fox tells Contreras the only way she can avoid jail is to step up to the microphone and recant. Contreras agrees, but does the opposite.
When you asked me to lift up my shirt without a witness,
Okay,
you asked me to lift up my shirt without a witness.
For 4 minutes, Contreras pleaded to hearing master Patricia Donninger to hear her. Donninger didn't look at the alleged sexual assault victim, deciding instead to play with Contreras' daughter.
How could you do this to me? How could you watch? How could you watch?
Contreras' 2-year-old daughter confronts the marshals arresting her mother.
Have them come over.
He said, can you please pull up your shirt without a witness? And I said, I don't think that's a good idea.
Yes, I do. Get a second if you have a female.
Contreras kisses her daughter before being sent to jail. Her young daughter sent to Child Haven. 2 months later, Contreras filed a complaint with Court Martial Internal Affairs. Sources tell the I-Team investigators were shocked. They never heard of the alleged courthouse sexual assault from Family Court Lieutenant Steve Rushfield. After a 6-month Internal Affairs investigation, Marshal Ron Fox was fired. Nobody from Clark County told Monica Contreras that. She found out because we found her. Even though Marshal Fox was fired, sources tell the I-Team Clark County is widening its investigation into why this incident and a growing number of assault allegations were never reported by family court management to Internal Affairs.
His attorney declined an on-camera interview, but in court filings claims the marshal's arrest was just because nobody in the courtroom tried to stop him.
Willow Kinlock is now ready to talk about what police did to her when she was just 15.
This is how they treat innocent people.
The night begins at a teenage bush party. Victoria police are called. Police try to take her home. When her parents' apartment buzzer doesn't work, though, they turn back.
I was asking her why I was not allowed to go home.
When Deputy Paul Sheen asked the girl to remove her shoes, Sheen rushes into the cell, kicks the teen, and pushes her against a corner wall before flinging her to the floor by her hair. He then squats down on Calhoun and hits her twice. Deputies say the girl was, quote, real lippy, and that she had called them, quote, fat pigs.
4 hours later, they untie her and tell her she's being charged with assaulting the jail guard. Her frantic mother is relieved when she finally comes home, then enraged to see the bruises.
I wanted to know how they could justify hurting her. She was so little. She was so tiny, and she was such a good girl.
The Crown sees this tape and drops the assault charge.
There's lots more here than just what you see on that video.
Victoria police defend it all. They say because of Kinlock's earlier behavior, the guard felt threatened.
Now keep in mind they had the wrong guy. The person that they were looking for had a completely different middle name and a completely different social security number. There's Henry Davis right now, so you're going to get a sense of...
That's the incorrect guy. That guy was
the wrong guy.
He was a welder.
He was working that night. He pulled over, because he pulled off the highway because it was raining too hard. He didn't feel safe driving home, so he pulled off the highway just to wait out the rain. Cop comes up behind him, runs his plate, and the name came up, Henry Davis, even though they have different middle names. And the cop,
Social Security.
and different Social Security numbers, and the cop goes arrested.
And he kept trying to tell the cop that arrested him, you got the wrong guy, there's no warrant out for my arrest, but they didn't listen to him. Davis said the cop approached his vehicle, grabbed his cell phone from his hand, cuffed him, and placed him in the back of the patrol car without a word of explanation. Now at that point, they took him to jail, right? The booking officer summoned a number of fellow cops. One opened the cell door while another suddenly charged, propelling Davis inside and slamming him against the back wall. I told the police officers there that I didn't do nothing. Why is you guys doing this to me? They said, okay, just lay on the ground and put your hands behind your back. They started hitting me. I was getting hit and I was just covered up.
So at one point, a female officer comes in and handcuffs him. Then they start kicking the shit out of him, okay? And then one of them sounds like he almost got a running start and then kicks him. And so that's when he gets bloodied, right? And all the time it's the wrong guy, but they didn't bother doing a thorough enough investigation. And all the time you have to understand something. He never resisted.
He never resisted, and we have proof that he never existed, overwhelming proof that he never existed.
After he was hospitalized and treated for his injuries, they actually put him back behind bars. He was driven back to the jail where he was held for several days before he posted $1,500 bond for 4 counts of property damage. Police officer John Baird signed complaints swearing on pain of perjury that Davis had bled on his uniform and those of 3 fellow officers. Now, it's egregious enough that they claimed that there was property damage because his blood got on them as they were beating him up, right? But then during the court proceedings, the cops denied that there was ever any blood on their uniforms in the first place. And when the lawyer for Henry, James Chattel, was asking them, well, didn't you say in your complaint that you got blood on your uniform? They're like, yeah, that's right, we did say that.
And then
was there blood on your uniform? No, there wasn't. So it was obviously perjury, right? If the cops claimed that they had blood on their uniform, even though that's a ridiculous thing to claim and charge someone with, well, then they shouldn't lie about it in court, and they shouldn't lie in any court documents. But it turns out they're not going to face any consequences for the perjury. However lax the department's system and however contradictory the officer's testimony, a federal magistrate ruled that the apparent perjury about the property damage charges was too minor to constitute a violation of due process, and that Davis's injuries were too minor to warrant a finding of excessive force. Never mind that a CAT scan taken after the incident confirmed that he had suffered a concussion.
Picking up speed before slamming the girl into the concrete wall. Police call this a, quote, impact push. The officer is Patrick Larison, a 6-year member of the force defended by the police union.
We should not be crucifying the officer without knowing all the facts.
I didn't see the girl resisting the officer. I didn't see where the officer gave the opportunity for her to comply with any orders. It's very troubling.
After the teen was thrust into the wall, for a moment she lies motionless on the ground while being handcuffed. Police say she wasn't hurt, but the video shows what appears to be a bloody wound on her head. The 15-year-old was booked on 3 charges, including assault. But now that the video is surfaced, it's the arresting officer who could also face criminal charges.
I'll show you a bit of video. It's going to have Hamza Jalani and 4 of his friends who were stopped after doing a U-turn in a parking lot, and then they had this interaction.
Plain and simple, if you fuck with me, I'm going to break your leg before you can get a chance to run. Be honest. I don't screw around.
Who said I was going to run?
I'm just giving you a heads up. I'm trying to be officer friendly right now.
Can you tell me why I'm getting arrested?
I feel like arresting you.
A church group in town is wrapping up their annual conference, but with a horrifying ending. Last night, congregation members say they witnessed a Richmond County deputy beating one of their own parishioners. Our Rachel Moore spoke with the member and has the details, but we want to warn you, the footage you're about to see may be upsetting.
24-year-old Ruth Jean is the woman on the ground. She's in Augusta for a church conference. She says the deputy struck her multiple times with his baton.
It hurts so bad, really bad, and shoved me on the ground and pulled my hair. As he was pulling my hair, I was screaming, you're pulling my hair, you're pulling my hair, but he wouldn't stop until the other cops came and really backed him up because I saw it myself.
This video was recorded by Michael Mathurin, one of the members visiting for the conference. After a late night service, Jean and several members of the conference went to the restaurant just before midnight. After eating, her pastor was confronted by Deputy William Geisen.
He asked me, screamed at me, "What did you say?" And I just, kind of stunned and paused, and I said, I was talking to my pastor and church members, and then he said it again very aggressively, "What did you say?" And I said, I was talking to my pastor and church members, and then he just physically grabbed my arm, pulled me about 10 feet, threw me on the back of the police car.
That's when Jean and the other members of the church came outside. Pastor Young, Jean, and her 16-year-old brother Wisely were all arrested. Jean says the deputy who repeatedly hit her was also the one who issued the 3 citations.
We just came out and we just stopped in front of the police car and we were just asking, "Why are you guys taking him? Why are you guys taking him?" I'm still in shock. I keep thinking this is a dream. I can't believe it happened to my sister.
Back in 2010, there was a botched raid in Detroit, or near Detroit, which resulted in a sleeping 7-year-old girl being shot and killed by a police officer. That police officer is Joseph Weekley, and it was decided recently that he will not face any charges for that botched raid or the fact that he shot and killed a sleeping 7-year-old. The prosecutors just decided, we're just going to drop the case altogether. We're going to drop all charges, and we're not going to force him to resign. So he is able to continue being a police officer, even considering the fact that he busted into someone's home just after midnight and shot and killed a 7-year-old who was doing absolutely nothing wrong.
A blind man is speaking out tonight after saying he was injured when a Little Rock police officer slammed him to the ground.
It was just before 4 o'clock Monday, June 1st. Eric Wilson left his job at Lighthouse for the Blind and missed the bus, so he started to walk home along 65th Street.
Show us out at 65th and Lakeview and reference to this car.
Hey! Come over and talk to me. Wilson is legally blind and says he only sees shadows. He says he didn't know who it was that was calling him.
Could have possibly been getting robbed, or, I didn't know what was about to happen.
Did you hear that? The officers tell Wilson to put his hands behind his back, and then he's taken to the ground. In a police report, an officer said Wilson pulled away violently, causing me to lose grip, and he was afraid Wilson would strike myself or my partner with the handcuff. That's not what the video shows.
When they tell him to come over here, he walks toward them. When they tell him take your hands out of your pockets, he takes his hands out of his pockets. What more do they want?
Wilson says he ended up going to the hospital where he was diagnosed with a strained lumbar.
These 4 Middletown, Orange County, New York men disappeared without a trace 8 months ago. Now the U.S. Attorney's Office says the men were killed, and the person responsible is this officer from the Briarcliff Manor Police Department.
This is Mountjoy Borough Police Department. He's standing out here harassing me currently at the moment. Say hi to Lebanon See-Through Live. He called me a dickwad. And he doesn't know how to conduct himself as a police officer.
You want to go out there and start printing out things, why don't you start trying to tell the truth for once, huh?
What truth?
I didn't call you a dickwad, you just called me a douchebag.
No, you just called me a dickwad.
No, I did not call you a dickwad.
You did.
I said, if you want to start up shit, I'll take you in for disorderly conduct.
This is how you act.
Yep, this is how you act.
What's going on? Are you ready? I'm going to push it.
Go for it.
I don't have a keys for it. Here. All right. Have a good night.
It's really not. It's not staying right here for the moment.
I don't have the key for it, and it's insured, and I'm not driving it.
Well, as soon as I verify that, then you can be on your way.
He didn't pull you over. He didn't do anything. He has no right.
I don't even have a key.
He has no legal right. In the state of Pennsylvania, you have to be violating a law to be pulled over.
That's fine. I'm going to contact a lawyer tomorrow because my car was...
It's a motorcycle plate Zulu 5973, Pennsylvania. You have no record of it?
Probably because it's fairly new. I'm just letting you know that you just said that he wasn't allowed to, but you're a liar.
I really don't care what you go ahead and say that I'm allowed to do or not or whatever. Oh!
He really just didn't want me
asking him any questions. When I did question him, that's when he kicked me.
A kick so hard it bruised Dozier's stomach. She had an emergency C-section 2 weeks later. In his report, Officer Jared Wheeler described it as a front push kick to the abdomen, as he was taught to do at the academy.
It's supposed to be used, for forcing entry into a door or something like that. What kind of a human being kicks a pregnant woman?
Dozier's attorney was even more shocked when he saw what happened with her complaint to the DeKalb Police Department. No investigation at all, and 5 supervisors, including Internal Affairs, said Wheeler's actions met policy.
They're showing that there is an ongoing pattern and practice of attempting to clear officers of clearly illegal, unconstitutional, and improper conduct.
Wheeler's report says Dozier was coming toward him in an aggressive manner, that it was very dark and she had a large shirt and he couldn't tell she was pregnant. But jail workers noticed right away and refused to take her on an obstruction charge, which prosecutors have now dropped.
Since 5, we've uncovered more complaints against a police officer. He's under investigation for kicking a pregnant woman in the stomach. It happened just weeks before her baby was born. Channel 2 investigative reporter Jody Fleischer is live in DeKalb County with what the other complaints have in common with the kicking incident.
Monica, we checked the records here at the police department and found 2 other use of force complaints against that same officer. In all 3 complaints, the victim was not the main focus of the original police investigation. And in all 3 cases, the officer faced no punishment. We filed an open records request and found 2 more use of force complaints against Wheeler. One from a woman whose daughter had just been in a car accident. Another when Wheeler responded to the wrong address and shot a family's dog. The department justified his actions and exonerated him.
Ronald Lanier broke down, describing how he landed in handcuffs and the hospital. While innocently shopping at Western Beef Wednesday, Garden City police threw him down and beat him without explanation.
And for somebody to grab me by the neck at the supermarket, and I'm telling you, I'm one of you, and you disrespected, it was just like, you just another black dude.
He too wears a badge, retired after 2 decades as a Nassau corrections officer. He complied and explained he's law enforcement, but cops laughed. Surrounded by civil rights activists, Lanier spoke of bruises to his body and his dignity. After 20 minutes in a squad car, the real perpetrator was found, a heavier man. These cops let Lanier go without a word.
Police say they will not identify the officers involved in this case, and we called the police department, but they have no comment for us. Cops do say at the time they were looking for this man, Stephen Wilson, who allegedly stole designer handbags from Lord & Taylor.
Early Saturday morning, when she joined others in filming police arresting a man.
He was handcuffed and his ankles were cuffed. It was bad. They were hitting him with a baton. They were kicking him.
About 10 minutes later, she says police noticed her recording it all with her iPhone.
I told him it was my civil right to film. And he told me that he would need to review the tape. And I asked him, what kind of evidence is it? And I told him that it wasn't evidence of the suspect doing a crime. I thought it was evidence of the police doing a crime.
She says the officer asked for the iPhone again, or else she'd be under arrest. Instead, she put it in her bra.
And he yanked my arms behind me and he cuffed me.
I will kill you. That's a gun on the left side of the screen, pressed to Yarbrough's head, and an officer threatening to kill him. I will kill you. The video shows officers punching and elbowing him in an effort to get his hands behind his back, until, at one point, an officer points out Yarbrough can't move because of the 4 men on top of him.
Guys, Dunham, you have to come up so he can get it back there.
You show that to 12 people on the street, they would certainly think that there was a problem. It certainly seems like that was an unreasonable use of force.
You and the department stand behind Officer Dunham's behavior in that video.
We do. Our Dateline hidden camera investigation is focusing on 2 Louisiana parishes where we've seen police stop people in their cars and interrogate them for seemingly any reason at all. And once they do, they have the power to take almost everything the motorist has on the spot. Why do police have so much power? That question still haunts one woman who learned what can happen when a sheriff's deputy takes the law and his power too far. Again, here's John Larson.
Karen Bryant had never been in trouble with the law. She was headed home to her 2 children after a week-long church convention when an unmarked car began following her. What'd you think it was?
I had no idea.
Didn't look like a police car.
No, it looked like a white sports car.
The man driving turned on a blue flashing light similar to this one and pulled her over. He was wearing a plain brown jacket and showed no identification.
And he walked up to the car and he said, "I'm police, roll your window down."
Karen had heard about the so-called blue light rapist who impersonated being a police officer. And now a man who had gotten out of an unmarked car was asking her to get out of her car.
I said, "Well, I'm not getting out of my car or rolling my window down until you show me some credentials." And at that point, he started screaming. I thought, he's not legit.
Yeah.
So I put the car in drive and took off.
Why were you running?
Because I thought he was going to kill me.
Karen Bryant did what women have been told to do in that situation, head to the nearest well-lit area. She sped to a gas station where she hoped to call police. But the man in the sports car caught her and tore her from her car.
And he threw me on the car and handcuffed me.
The man in the unmarked car turned out to be Sheriff's Deputy Dennis Fontenot, a 6-foot, 230-pound weightlifter who claimed Bryant had improperly changed lanes. And when Bryant threatened to call a lawyer,
he said, "If you're going to act like an ass, we're going to treat you like an ass."
They took Bryant to jail, where Deputy Fontenot ordered her strip searched. She says it was the most humiliating moment in her life.
The type of strip search they issued or ordered was a cavity search. I mean, I felt subhuman. I was being treated subhumanly.
Karen Bryant sued, and the sheriff settled the case out of court. Deputy Fontenot was fired.
Deputy Fontenot? John Larson from Dateline NBC News.
How you doing? Good. So why, when we caught up with him, was he still in uniform? Because he went to work for the neighboring sheriff, and now he's back on patrol.
Why was it necessary to handcuff her and strip search her?
Talk to my lawyer, okay?
So how does a woman, who just an hour earlier was on her way home from a church convention, wind up fingerprinted, photographed, and jailed? All for something that supposedly began as a minor traffic violation, improper lane usage. Remember, improper lane usage was one of the same reasons police used to stop Cheryl Sanders and then seize her car.
Speeding up, slowing down,
I've had my
line.
And it was the same reason deputies used to pull us over. And we weren't alone.
Improper lane change.
Improper lane change.
Improper lane usage. Improper lane change.
Dateline found hundreds of other traffic tickets, all saying the same thing, improper lane usage. A grandmother on her way home to Texas.
I was shook down. I felt all over my body. My things were gone through in my car and thrown on the ground. He implied that he would forget everything if I gave him a beautiful leather jacket I had inside there.
This woman was on her way to her sister's funeral when police stopped her, searched her car, not once, not twice.
3 times within 6 miles.
On the same day?
On the same day.
How long did it take you to go those 6 miles?
About 4.5 hours.
That's about a mile an hour.
Yeah.
You could have walked it faster than that.
Definitely.
All these improper lane changes, what's your suspicion on what's really going on?
Well, they're pulling them over because that given police officer thinks that if he gets this person pulled over, he's going to get lucky, and he's going to get money or he's going to get drugs.
More law enforcement breaking the law than citizens.
This Louisiana cop says police are on a fishing expedition, targeting out-of-state drivers who are less likely to come back and fight police in court.
They get them out the car, search them, want to know how they got the watch or how they got the money in their pocket and go through their luggage, things like that.
And, says this officer, some Louisiana police illegally target drivers for the color of their skin.
There's a lot of minorities out there getting robbed.
Like these 2 Hispanic men, Evaristo, his son Jesse, and their friend Nau were taking almost $12,000 in cash from their jobs in North Carolina to their families in Mexico. It was all perfectly legal. Afraid of Mexican bandits, they hid their money, their life savings, in their tennis shoes. Levon Meads is their employer.
I wouldn't have been surprised if it had happened to him in Mexico, but I was very surprised, shocked, disappointed, all those things that had happened in this country.
Police from the town of Sulphur stopped the men here, along Interstate 10, even though there was not a trace of drugs, and even though the men had no criminal record. Police threw both men in jail, charging them with illegal use of U.S. currency, and they put Evaristo's 10-year-old son, Jesse, into foster care.
He's just a little boy, and I knew he was going to be terrified at being stopped, having his father carted off to jail.
During our 4 trips to Louisiana, we saw dozens of cars stopped. Most of the drivers were minorities. Civil rights lawyers in Louisiana have a name for this type of traffic violation. They call it DWH, driving while Hispanic. Evaristo and Noe hired Tom Lorenzi's firm to help try to get their truck and their life savings back. And that's when they discovered another astonishing aspect of Louisiana's forfeiture law.
You have to put up a $2,500 bond in order to get to go to court to have the opportunity to prove that you're not guilty of anything.
It took nearly 3 days for their employer, Levon Meads, to drive over 1,000 miles to Louisiana to help get the men out of jail and get Jesse out of foster care.
It's been very difficult on all of us. It really has. Everybody has been affected tremendously by this experience.
It took 3 months, but they got their truck and most of their money back. But they say their legal battle cost them more than $4,000, a third of their life savings.
The system is preying on people who are not truly capable of defending themselves.
I wasn't going to let them get away with it. It was wrong, and I had to do something about it.
Cheryl Sanders, the woman from California whose car was taken, also decided to fight back. She had to post a bond equal to the value of her car, $7,500, just to begin the process of trying to get her own car back. She took a bus back to Louisiana and hired an attorney. Her legal battle took 7 months.
I'm scared to death of this town.
But Cheryl won, sort of.
Well, here it is. And I'm so happy to see my vehicle. You wouldn't believe it.
She got her car back and went home to California.
See you, Tim. Thank you.
But her fight had been so expensive, she had to sell the car to pay off her legal bills. The only transportation she has left is a bicycle.
I can't imagine that this still happens in America. I just can't imagine it.
This is America, and I do realize that they have to do their job, but when they are acting worse than the people they're trying to arrest, there's something wrong.
Ricky Edwards is the sheriff of Jefferson Davis Parish.
Deputies are out there doing their job. The state police and most law enforcement are out there doing their job.
It was his deputies who stopped Karen Bryant, and they also stopped us.
Would it surprise you to know that your deputies pulled us over?
No, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't know. I wasn't there. If he said you were speeding, I would have to assume that you were speeding.
But we had 5 hidden cameras rolling that show we did not commit any traffic violation. We were just another out-of-state car passing through.
Are you insinuating that we're targeting out-of-state people? I can only tell you that we are not.
These 17 people find that hard to believe.
I drive around it. I now live in Georgia. I come to Austin, Texas to visit my daughters and grandchildren. I go north and then south.
You drive around the whole state?
That is right, and I shall never drive in the state of Louisiana.
We're not here to violate anybody's constitutional rights. We are waging a war on drugs.
If this is a war on drugs, it sounds like there are a lot of civilian casualties.
If that is happening, then I would definitely want to have that feedback, and I would definitely try to correct that.
Your deputies not only owe them an apology, they probably owe them their badges.
You'd have to look into that and see, yes.
If you're thinking all this might convince Louisiana to change the law, think again. Critics say police have too much money at stake.
How much money are we talking about?
Each year in this one jurisdiction where we are right now, it's about $3 million.
So how are police spending the millions of dollars to fight the war on drugs? They used some of the money to find white powder, all right, but it wasn't cocaine.
When we come back, our story takes another outrageous twist as we learn how many people stand to win, and win big, in Louisiana's war on drugs.
Ada Matias breaking down each time she watches this video showing a Lee County deputy pointing his weapon at her family.
Oh my God!
and arresting her teenage daughter. It happened last year on July 31st when Matias was having a party at her home in East Fort Myers. Cameras were rolling when the good time took a horrible turn, ending with the arrest of Ada, her husband, and her teenage daughter. A sheriff's office report shows Deputy Scott Hill was on patrol when he noticed 4 Hispanic males drinking beer next to Ada's home. Reports show Hill then arrested the 4 men for having open containers. One of them was Ada's husband. That's when Ada walked outside to find out why he was being arrested.
What is the problem?
According to police reports, the deputy says there were 30 to 35 people in the yard. Ada Matias confronted me and started yelling in Spanish. It was obvious that Matias was trying to incite a riot among the gathering people and refusing my lawful commands to leave the area. Hill then called for backup, and Deputy Kenneth Sherman arrived, and that's when things really heated up. Video shows Ada's 10-year-old daughter going to the cruiser to see her father. Deputy Sherman then grabs her arm and pulls her away. When the girl runs back again, Deputy Hill pulls out a weapon in front of small children. Deputy Hill then approaches Ada's 14-year-old daughter with a pair of handcuffs. And that's when Deputy Sherman takes her to the ground and she's arrested. 2 small children try to approach their sister, but are pushed away. In Deputy Hill's report, he writes, the 14-year-old girl raised her fist and struck him in the arm and chest multiple times before she was restrained by Deputy Sherman. But that's not what the video shows. We also asked the girl about this directly. The deputy says that you swung at him multiple times. Is that true?
No, it's not.
The teen was charged with battery on a law enforcement officer and resisting an officer with violence. Miami attorney John DeLeon is fighting to get those charges dismissed.
It just seems completely way out of bounds to point the guns at children who, while they're investigating, a misdemeanor drinking in public. And this is what leads to people tragically getting shot.
We asked the Lee County Sheriff's Office about what happened. They say Deputy Hill had every right to draw his weapon because he felt Ada Matias was inciting a riot and his life was in danger. But we found this is not the first time Deputy Scott Hill has been accused of using excessive force. On January 7th, customers at a Fort Myers gay bar called the Office Pub say Hill and another deputy charged them in the parking lot with their guns drawn.
They were charged at us with their guns drawn and their flashlights on us and said, get on your knees. And we didn't move to get on our knees right away, so then they said, get on your knees. We will shoot you.
At the time, Deputy Hill was serving a warrant next door at Babe's Gentlemen's Club when he claims hearing gunshots coming from the area of the Office Pub. But customers say the sound wasn't from a gun, it was actually a car door being slammed. Reports show deputies ordered all 7 customers to the ground, but Robert Ortiz is handicapped and couldn't comply, so Deputy Hill shot him with a taser. The Lee County Sheriff's Office investigated the bar customers' complaints and determined there was no evidence to prove the officers did anything wrong.
Authorities say the female officer arrived as backup after there were reports of criminal activity at the scene. 5 seconds after she comes into view on the video near the doorway, a loud shot is heard. Eventually, Ariano falls to his knees and lays motionless on the sidewalk.
She exited her patrol car, gun drawn, and asked the gentleman to get on the ground. And about a second later, she shot him in the chest.
At a news conference yesterday, Santa Ana Police Chief Carlos Rojas said Kevin Ariano was hit once in the chest by the 13-year veteran. Ariano, according to Rojas, displayed odd behavior.
The kid surrendered. The cop, on the other hand, came right up behind him. He immediately dove on the kid and started welling on him, man. Come on now, that's not policing.
Even though it's hard to watch, police trainer Don Cameron says the officer used appropriate force to restrain the man.
Basically, that's what they're trained to do. When we're down on the ground, we want to get the person to custody as quickly as we can, and we use personal weapons to do it.
Former Oakland Police Chief Howard Jordan, now a KPIX5 analyst, troubled by the continuous use of force after a backup officer had arrived, especially when the officer pulled his gun on the crowd.
I understand that the officer may have been trying to keep the people from getting close to him, but I don't necessarily agree that that's the best use of force. It does look bad. It does appear inappropriate.
As I got ready to walk in my building, he punched me on my right side as hard as he can.
Nicola Robinson is 8 months pregnant. She showed us where she says the plainclothes officer punched her after he first shoved her while she was holding her 1-year-old son. She then described the racist rant that followed.
After he punched me, he presumed to say, "You black, you better be happy that I didn't hit you hard enough and make you lose your." baby.
The incident happened in the 5100 block of West Washington about 5:30 Friday night. Robinson says she was standing out front with her kids when 3 cops ran by chasing a man. They couldn't catch him, so Robinson and others laughed at the officers. The apartment buildings have several security cameras, and the video clearly shows the officer punching her. Do you think the police officer even realized there was a camera up there?
Not until after I told them. Then that's when the attitude about him started changing. And he got real quiet. You could tell in his face that he knew that, man, I messed up.
The assault sent Robinson into premature labor. She spent 5 hours at West Suburban Hospital under observation before she was cleared to go home.
I saw him punch her with his right hand. He punched her right in her right side.
Robinson's sister said she also heard the officer's racist rant and saw the reaction of the other cops on the scene.
They see this truck coming down, which generally fits the description of the truck they're looking for. For some reason, they opened fire on that pickup truck, that blue pickup truck, and hit 2 people inside. It turns out those people were innocent. It was a case of mistaken identity. Well, that leads us to this scene you're looking at right now, the one right around the corner. Torrance police get a phone call of shots fired. They respond coming into the neighborhood from this way. As they're coming in, another pickup truck, that black pickup truck you're looking at right there, generally fits the description of Dorner's truck they've been looking for. Torrance PD, responding to a call of shots fired, sees this truck. We have another case of mistaken identity. Apparently there's some sort of collision with the patrol car and the truck. There are more shots fired, this time Torrance police officers the ones firing the shots.
He's clearly on a short fuse.
Cut the car off now!
A trooper pursues a driver who's been speeding.
Turn the car off! Run it window now! Roll your window down now! Turn the car off, put the damn keys out the window! Now! Out of the car, on the ground now! Get out of the car! Get on the ground! With my seatbelt on! Get out of the car, put the damn keys! Get out now! Now, on the ground! On the ground! Now! On the ground!
The driver, a nursing student from Florida, suffers scratches and bruises as she's dragged from her car and handcuffed.
On the ground! Now! On the ground!
The dash cam video, broadcast nationwide, stirs widespread claims of police brutality. In the end, she gets a speeding ticket and a 6-figure legal settlement from the South Carolina Department of Public Safety.
Oh, I didn't know you were a cop. I didn't know you were a cop.
I'll put a hole right through your head.
Okay.
Number one, you're lucky I'm a cop, because I'll be beating the piss out of you right now.
This isn't the first time Chief Sacco's been troubled by LaBert's behavior.
Is that your brother?
July 2012. LaBert confronts a man filming a routine police street engagement, licks his finger and tries to smudge the man's lens. LaBert keeps smiling eerily into the camera, tells him what he should do with his brother.
What you should do is just take him up on the railroad tracks and tell him to lay down.
Chief Sacco tells CNN when the video of that 2012 incident was brought to their attention, then Officer LaBert got a verbal reprimand and some counseling. Chief Sacco says he can't justify what happened in either incident, but he does say that LaBert is a good detective who does solid work. Wolf?
Brian, there was also another incident back in the 1990s where the same officer's judgment was in question, right?
That's right. LaBert was more loosely involved in this particular incident, Wolf. In the early 1990s, a man sued LaBert, and he sued LaBert's uncle. He claimed that LaBert and his uncle, who was also a police officer, came to his house in uniform, and the uncle beat him. The LaBerts lost that civil lawsuit, but settled on appeal. Stephen LaBert did not have to pay anything in that.
He had been under fire for 6 months, accused of making racist and sexist obscene remarks, including when speaking of African Americans, quote, they should get back on a ship and go back to Africa. He was also accused of making degrading remarks about women.
That officer then presses his fist into the side of Duckworth's neck. Seconds later, it appears Duckworth is unconscious. A smear of blood is left behind on the wall. The corrections officers put a spit mask over his head. Wendy Cosma says her daughter may be 27, but due to a birth defect, she has the mental capacity of an 8-year-old. The Cosmas have always stressed to their daughter that if someone ever tries to harm her, she should find the nearest police officer.
That was broken in an instant.
On August 3rd, 2012, Jody's grandma and aunt took her to the Livonia Walmart, but store loss prevention officers thought they saw Jody putting a package of hair ties in her waistband. In fact, Jody had paid for those $3 hair ties, but that did not stop Walmart's security team from calling the cops. Instead of calmly talking to family members or to Jody, within 10 seconds, Livonia police officers were on top of Jody, handcuffing her.
They said, please just, put your hands behind your back for us. She thought she was just complying, and next thing she knew, she was thrown to the ground.
Once Wendy was allowed in, she showed the officers that Jody had nothing hidden on her body and that she had not stolen a thing. The Cosmas later asked Livonia police to investigate the incident, and they wanted an apology so that Jody could once again trust the police. When Jody never got that apology, the Cosmas felt they had no choice but to sue. They recently settled their lawsuit against Livonia for $125,000.
To this day, if you ask them, did they do anything wrong, they'd say no, and they'd say they're not going to apologize. But they did do something wrong. How can you say you didn't do something wrong? She didn't have the hair ties, and you threw her on the ground, and you've already admitted under oath she was not a danger to anybody.
The Livonia city attorney told us in a written statement that they agreed to settle the lawsuit because even though, quote, it is our firm belief that the Livonia Police Department acted very professionally at all times, if this matter were to proceed to a jury trial, it is possible that a sympathetic jury could overlook that and award even higher damages.
For him to get out of the car and fires 2 shots as Jones raises his hands. Krubert fires twice more. Watch.
Can I see your license, please? Get out of the car! Get out of the car! Get on the ground! Get on the ground!
I just got my license. You taking my license? I got my license right there. That's my license right there.
Put your hands behind your back. 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 Put your hands behind your back.
What did I do, sir?
Are you hit?
I think so. I can't feel my leg. I don't know what happened. I just grabbed my leg.
Brakes on 86690 at 1052.
Why did you shoot me?
Well, you dove head first back into your car.
I'm sorry.
Then you jumped back out. I'm telling you, get out of your car.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear 2 words, sir.
Hold on a sec.
My license is right here on the ground. I didn't do it. Why were you pulling me over? I just pulled
Your seatbelt violation, sir.
Seatbelt? I just pulled it off right there at the corner to pull in the gas station.
2 Chesapeake police officers used excessive force and arrested her for no reason. It happened back in March when the 2 officers showed up at her house looking to serve a warrant for her son. An officer grabbed her, pushed her into the wall, and threw her on the ground. But in court documents, the officer claims she was cursing and kicked him. Davenport was arrested, but the Commonwealth's attorney dropped her charges. Her attorney today believes a video recorded by an officer's body camera, which police are refusing to release, could be the evidence Davenport needs to win.
Today, for the 3rd time, I asked the Chesapeake Police Department if they would release me that video. They told me no. I also asked if they wanted to comment about the lawsuit. They also said no.
A teenager in Philadelphia was told he would have the shit beaten out of him for merely making eye contact with a police officer.
We're told this all may have started over a simple misunderstanding, but according to the victim and witnesses, it escalated quickly.
We have another example of cops using excessive force, this time on a 95-year-old World War II vet.
The officer was not charged with any crimes.
The deputy used excessive force, then lied about it.
Of lying under oath during his friend's trial. That friend was later convicted of raping 2 young girls.
Now, Goldman suffered facial injuries and broken teeth. He filed a federal lawsuit accusing Nugent of harassing him because he was black. Now, in 2009, the city of Kalamazoo settled, agreeing to pay $175,000. But fast forward 8 years. Here's video of Officer Nugent and Officer Eric Schaefer working to pull James Dunnigan off the floor of a police cruiser, unable to speak and foaming at the mouth. He later died at the jail.
Also part of the investigation, pages and pages of text messages between the 4 officers that are also racially biased and homophobic. One reads, "Jimmy, what would Big Dad do to that N-word? Get that N-word out from under the wagon and that N-lover in the wagon."
Dondi and Judy, Sheriff Lott admits the video does not show his deputy, Paul Derrick, in a particularly favorable way. And so far, the reaction from our viewers has been, well, you'd have to say it has been harsh. But take a look for yourself and make your own decision. Was the deputy over the line?
Monday night,
a week ago, on the patio at Buffalo Wild Wings on Divine Street, off-duty Richland County Deputy Paul Derrick has placed a young woman in handcuffs. Handcuffs the 14-year department veteran has retrieved from his truck along with his gun and badge. It's not immediately clear why Derrick has chosen to take those actions, but another customer decides to begin recording the events with a cell phone. He is 23-year-old USC student and soldier Stephen Hughes, known to his friends as Wawa.
I said, man, I'm going to start videoing this because I think something's about to get out of hand. And about the time I got my video out, he had her turned around and was putting her in handcuffs. I mean, that she never yelled at him. She never resisted. She was as calm as she could be. Obviously, she was scared. I mean, when you get arrested, especially if it's your first time, you're going to be scared.
The confrontation between Derrick and the woman, 23-year-old Brittany Ball, continues to escalate. It turns out Ball is also a soldier at Fort Jackson, a fact not lost on Derrick, who is an ex-Marine. With her hands cuffed behind her, the video shows Derrick yanking on the chain and shouting commands as Ball screams.
Army, stand up! Let the Marine Corps tell you what the fuck is all about! Okay? So let the Army tell the Marine Corps up, stand up!
It was stand up, soldiers stand up. This is what the Marines do to us. And then the next line is something along the lines of, this is how the Army is treated by Marines. Let me show you.
At one point, Ball appears to pitch forward into a table, buckling it. Watching nearby, and at times trying to intervene, restaurant employees and other customers, including 3 other soldiers.
At an establishment like that, if the management hasn't asked you to leave, then you as a customer can't ask somebody to leave. I mean, you have to go get management. That's the whole point of having a business, is let management handle it.
Derrick, though, does not let management handle it, instead warning others away as he remains on the patio with Ball still unable to free herself.
Step away!
Curtis Martis stepped outside to welcome his friend Bryce to his house, only to find that an Independence cop had pulled his friend over.
Cop went up to the passenger window and was like, hey, roll down the window.
Martis says Bryce couldn't roll it down
because he doesn't have the cable that allows the electric window to work.
I believe he did crack the window to the point where the officer could see, but he couldn't get him to roll it down any further.
That's when things got rough.
And he tased him, and he had him by his arms, and he just threw him on the ground, and it busted Bryce's whole face up right here.
Michelle Baker saw the scuffle from her house, too.
I went down there and said, you're really going to do this to a kid? You know, I mean, you could tell he's a kid, and he's a little kid, so he couldn't have hurt the cop for sure.
Martis says it took the officers several minutes to realize Bryce was unconscious and needed an ambulance.
I think, man, it's messed up. I just watched my best friend die and come back to life, and now he's in critical condition.
We first showed you this video of Sergeant Brandon Fredrickson, closest to the camera, shoving a handcuffed Randolph Holmes against a door. This video shows how the officer broke his nose and gave him a concussion.
It took an FOIA, Freedom of Information Act request on your part for those tapes to come out. Had they been handled properly when the state's attorney reviewed them initially, Mr. Holmes should have been set free, and Mr. Fredrickson is the person who should have been sitting in a jail cell. And to this day, he is not.
And now we have this new video from the Sauk Village Police Department. Holmes was taken there that night for fingerprinting. Montgomery says it shows Fredrickson demonstrating what happened with Holmes to his brother, a Sauk Village cop.
He shows his fist coming forward, and then he shows himself buckling at the knees as Holmes did after Holmes received that sucker punch.
Montgomery believes Fredrickson should be charged with battery and misconduct for trying to cover it all up.
When you don't prosecute situations like this, you're giving effectively the police permission to do it again. You are telling the good people around him who work with him, don't waste your time blowing the whistle on him because nothing's going to happen.
I was really scared because, you know, it's my dad and he fell
was not supposed to fall like that.
His fall was so frightening because he was just 3 weeks out of the hospital where he underwent brain surgery, and suddenly he's on the kitchen floor, unconscious and shaking with a severe seizure.
I was scared. Like, I don't know, I was freaking out.
So this 17-year-old grabbed her phone and dialed 911. She says she got no quick answers, so hung up and called again. Now, you know those emergency calls are recorded, but did you know the recording starts even before the call is answered? So you can hear her near panic when again she can't get an immediate answer, blurting out the F word just as the call is picked up.
911.
I need an ambulance for 5 Hartwig.
But the Lincoln Park cop who takes the call admonishes her and only makes her more frantic.
Well, okay, first of all, you don't need to swear over 911.
Okay.
And slow down.
Ambulance.
You haven't had a chance to tell him how serious this is, right? And he's already hung up the phone.
Well, I thought my dad was going to die. I was really scared.
So you called back.
911.
Are you going to give me an ambulance?
Are you going to swear again, you stupid?
Your dad's still on the floor.
Well, I'm thinking he's seriously hurt because he's still having a seizure, and it's a really long seizure.
So she calls back a third time. After wasting more than 6 minutes, the cop finally called the rescue squad.
There it is. I kept getting a 911 call from this filthy-mouthed girl that wanted a rescue. I never found out what it was, and I was never able to transfer it over to you.
And that's the same story he told on the police radio when he dispatched a squad car to the house.
I kept getting 911 calls from this girl, hostile girl, requesting a rescue. No idea what it's for. I couldn't get through her comments.
Meanwhile, Adrian left her older brother to tend to her dad and rushed a few blocks here to police headquarters to demand help and file a complaint, when the cop greeted her with this.
Are you the girl with the foul mouth? And I said, yes. And then he came out from the back and then arrested me.
That's right, she was cuffed and cited for disorderly conduct and abusing 911, a charge that doesn't even exist. So, who is this officer who so badly mishandled such an important job? He's Sergeant Robert McFarland, a 20-year veteran of the department and a man who did his best to avoid public accountability for what he did here.
Sergeant, get out of here. Help us understand. Get out of here. What were you thinking? No comment. What were you thinking, sir? You put a life in danger. You put the taxpayers at risk.
The officer, who makes at least $62,000 a year, has publicly said not a word at all about his conduct that day.
I think it may be something where he will lose time over, and he will have training, but he'll have his job. Yes.
It started as a stop for speeding.
Can I put my dress on so I have my swim?
No, don't worry about it. Come on out here.
But Brandy Hamilton, still in her bikini, and passenger Alexandria Randall never expected their trip home from the beach would lead to a body cavity search on the side of Highway 288.
One of them's got her zipper open on her pants, or her Daisy Duke shorts, whatever they are.
That's the trooper on the radio. He reportedly smelled marijuana. The women say the trooper never changed gloves between the searches.
So I don't know if she's got something in her crotch.
Nothing was found on either woman.
The thing that's offensive about this is the fact that it's the most intrusive type of search, which is a body cavity search. And the question is, for what?
And when it extends to our personal bodies in an open and public venue and forum, someone has to say enough is enough.
Excellent.
What can I do for you?
Nothing. I'm just covering a story for MinnesotaChange.org about unwarranted raids in Wapton. So.
You're under arrest for interference with a police investigation. Put your hands behind your back.
Everything was going fine until I mentioned my story was about unwarranted raids. Dustin Hill quickly snapped his head and turned to the defensive.
Nothing. I'm just covering a story for MinnesotaChange.org about unwarranted raids in Wapton. So.
You're under arrest for interference with a police investigation. Put your hands behind your back.
I was just standing outside the Wapton, North Dakota Police Department, filming an officer who practices unwarranted raids when he came up and arrested me unlawfully, handcuffed me, and I was detained, interrogated, and harassed by one of the officers.
After being arrested, Officer Dustin Hill had 3 other officers escort me into the police department and place me in an interview room, where one officer came in and told me he was Dustin Hill's supervisor and asked me where I felt I had the right to film Dustin Hill. I told him that North Dakota law, United States law, and the First Amendment of the United States Constitution gives me every right to film anybody in public. He then left. They left me there, handcuffed, for nearly an hour. He then returned and told me to stand up, remove my handcuffs, told me to grab my camera and leave. He told me that I needed to understand that I pissed Dustin Hill off. There was no police investigation going on. Dustin Hill was talking to a citizen. He arrested me unlawfully. I was detained unlawfully. I'm 17 years old. My parents were not notified, which is also illegal, and I was never even read my Miranda rights.
Yes, tased me. Tased me. Without any warning. For no reason. I had no idea why.
Tacoma police used force to arrest and handcuff a deaf woman after she called 911 for help. Now, instead of getting an apology, she ended up bloody. She was thrown in jail for nearly 3 days without an interpreter before all charges were eventually dropped.
When LaShawn White found herself under attack in her own apartment, she turned on her special video-equipped phone. According to dispatch officer communication logs, the patrolmen were repeatedly provided information that the victim could not hear a thing.
I'm deaf. I can't hear if they're out front knocking or whatever. I can't. Now, are they going to the front or the back? Where are the police at? The police want her to go outside the front door. Oh, they're here? Okay, I'm on my way to meet them. I'm going right now.
LaShawn showed our cameras her route straight out of her basement apartment door, up one flight of stairs, and through the double glass doors leading to the street. A 30-second trip. To LaShawn, what happened next defies common sense, especially for a woman with no criminal record, no arrests, and just one minor traffic violation ever. Within seconds of running outside to meet police, Officer Kuskovich pulls out his taser and fires a 2-barbed electric wire into LaShawn's ribs and stomach.
You know, all I'm doing is waving my hand in the air, and then the next thing I know, I'm on the ground.
Witnesses say LaShawn began bleeding heavily from her knuckles and that her face hit the pavement after the taser jolt. Pictures acquired by Team 7 investigators also show injuries to her cheek, chin, ribs, and arms. Margaret Sims's apartment is right over the spot. She says it was around 11:30 at night and dark when she heard LaShawn screaming in pain and ran to the balcony.
I hollered down and I said, she's deaf and can't speak.
Sims spoke with the officers while LaShawn was still in handcuffs. She says they admitted there was a misunderstanding.
I said, she's deaf. She couldn't even hear you.
Another apartment tenant, Geraldine Warren, says she heard the whole commotion too.
When I got outside the door, he was standing there. I said, aren't you supposed to say, how, like that?
That's exactly what both officers told their superiors after the fact. Kuskovich wrote, I yelled for White to stop and held my right hand up to signal for White to stop. White ignored my commands. He added, White was making a loud grunting noise, had a piercing stare in her eyes, and had a clenched right fist in the air. Using this statement as proof, Tacoma police hit LaShawn with 2 criminal charges, simple assault and obstruction of a law enforcement officer. They then carted her off to jail.
Accused of physically abusing a 12-year-old. News 12's Laura Warren spoke with the boy's mother today.
And Richard, she is a mom that we can all relate to. She says she hoped Deputy Alton Walker would talk to her son, maybe help get him back on the right track. But instead, he sent him to the hospital. She doesn't want to show her face, but she does want to tell her story. A story of a single mom trying to keep her 12-year-old from choosing the wrong path.
He's a wonderful kid. He's very smart in school, good academics, all around good kid. It's just that Brandon just started hanging out with the wrong crowd, so to speak.
The past couple of months, she says, he started hanging out a little later, bringing around questionable friends. So she stepped in.
As a concerned mom, I refused to let the streets have my baby.
A family friend suggested letting a deputy she knew come over, talk to him, keep him on the right path.
That's all the situation's supposed to have been, that the officer come over, speak to my son, just talk to him verbally, conversation. No physical contact, no nothing.
She was at work last night when she told Deputy Alton Walker it was okay to drop by. But her son says the deputy did a lot more than talk. Neighbors say they heard the boy crying out. They looked over the fence to see him being pushed up against this shed. Then they saw the off-duty deputy handcuff the boy to this basketball goal.
He hollered, "Quit tasing me," and he wasn't smacking him, he was punching him. I'm talking about like he was a boxer, and snatching him up, slamming him up against the building. He threw him on the ground. I seen him pull his baton out a couple times and hit him.
Investigators tell News 12 the deputy never tased the boy, just arced the taser a few times to scare him. But a neighbor says he saw the boy tased and heard him scream out, "Stop tasing me." I asked Brandon, and he told me he got electrocuted several times.
He was at this gas station. He was wearing these headphones that might have kept him from hearing the officer's commands. That said, I want to play part of this for you. The first part of the video is silent. As the officer arrives on the scene, you see a group of people seeing the unit arrive. And now watch, you'll hear the officer turn on the audio on his body camera.
Get your hands out now! Get your hands out! Get them out! Shots fired, shots fired.
Later in the video, the officer says he cannot find a weapon on Taylor. The district attorney said Officer Braun Cruz was cleared.
Just after 7:30 p.m. on September 19th, officers John Slepsky and John Slazak respond to a call of a man lying in the road. They approach from different directions. Then this.
I think we ought to just pop him. I think we just pop him. Come on, get up. Yeah, I know.
According to an internal affairs investigation into the incident, Officer Slepsky is the one heard using expletives and derogatory remarks to belittle and demean the subject. Slepsky is seen here on the left. Slepsky makes the following remark. Slazak doesn't object. Slepsky told investigators he pretended to use the spray, and the internal affairs report says he didn't pepper spray the man. But the report says both Officers Slazak and Slepsky engaged in improper use of force by removing the pepper spray and their batons when the man was not being combative.
Tonight, a crime alert as a Dallas police officer, a man sworn to uphold the law, accused of raping a woman while on duty.
According to the arrest affidavit on Larga Drive near Bachman Lake on a Monday in September 2013, Johnson detained a woman and a man, ordered the man to leave, and told the woman to get in the back seat of his marked car. According to that affidavit, Johnson then drove the woman to the dead-end circle behind an apartment complex, got in the back seat, and committed rape.
WDRB News at 10 starts now.
Good evening and thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm David Scott.
And I'm Elizabeth Woolsey. Tonight, we begin with allegations of 4 police officers breaking the law with a 15-year-old girl.
I saw this video.
Some very disturbing video.
There's this video going viral.
Well, the disturbing video that we showed you last night might not be the only video.
This video, it's an incident involving a Montgomery County police officer.
And a warning, you may find the video disturbing to watch.
Caught on video, the NYPD.
I want you to watch something that seems to show some police brutality.
It's all because of video the cops may have tried to hide.
Looking at dramatic police body camera video obtained by Team 10 proves they were assaulted by officers while trying to help an innocent man.
Baltimore City police officer caught on camera punching a man on a sidewalk.
Staying with the theme of police in New York, a video has emerged showing police officers attacking a man.
A disturbing video from Hunt County appears to show a sheriff's deputy hitting a pregnant woman with his fist.
He was videotaping an officer abusing a 15-year-old child.
The shocking surveillance video of the assault.
This video showing Carlsbad police officer hitting a woman in the head.
The Como 4 problem solvers discovered that police dash cam video is once again at the center of a firestorm at City Hall.
Well, this is video surveillance that shows Officer Derek Nugent slamming a teen's head into the wall.
Shocking video of a police officer.
Which was, of course, captured by a surveillance camera.
A sheriff's deputy has been accused of using excessive force several times, and he is still on the job.
It's an obvious case of law enforcement intimidation.
What you're going to see in this recently released cell phone video is 2 San Antonio area police officers gunning down Gilbert Flores as he stands with his hands in the air.
An unarmed man shot 16 times by officers.
The boy was buckled into the passenger seat of his father's car when police opened fire.
Firing shots into a minivan with 5 kids inside.
Police in Bridgeport, Connecticut were caught on tape.
Video from a body camera showing him assaulting a suspect.
Dash cam video shows a St. Petersburg police officer throwing a man to the ground. The officer tried to prevent others from seeing it.
And last year he was suspended for having an inappropriate relationship with a teen.